Okay, thank you everyone for coming back. Okay, so I wanna, I'm putting everyone on mute and I'm starting. Okay, thank you everyone for coming back. And it's being recorded. Okay, if anyone has a question as to what I'm saying, you could please come on. I could put the recording on hold, or I could continue on with the recording if you have any questions to what I'm saying. I want to tell you an avodah that I had. I want to speak about two avodot that I had this week. One of them is related to what I taught last week. And one of them is related to something that Michal, her avodah this week, which is really interesting and made me think as well. But last week we spoke about the fact that there's really no reality in this world. Why? Because there are usual like facts, and then we interpret the facts. And because everyone interprets the facts differently, it means that I create my own reality in this world. So I told the story about, okay, doesn't matter, the story that I told, but I want to tell you a story about what happened to me this week with my husband, and how it was within my hands to interpret the story one way or interpret the story in another way. And in the way that I interpret the story really would be very clear if I am deciding to live in Gan Eden, or am I deciding to live in the jungle? And we're going to get to the jungle story, but the jungle means if I decide to live in like a hell that I created for myself. So I've been going to Michal Peretz's classes for already two years, and I love going with Ralph. And he is not crazy about the classes. To him, it seems more like, it's too free-flowing for him. It's too associative. Too many women are talking. So it's not his cup of tea. But for me, sharing and going to the classes with him makes me feel like we're doing something together that is meaningful for me and that I love it. Therefore, I make sure not to ask Ralph, like I don't ask him for many things at all. I don't want to go out. We don't go out to eat. We don't do many things together. If we do, we spend time at home together. And if he'll say, I want to go to a concert, I would go with him and almost expect for him to reciprocate and want to come with me to Michal Peretz, which is not a good idea to do, because then I'm not doing it because I want to. I'm doing it out of a manipulative process. So I decided to stop doing those things as well. And I just told him, I would really love for you to come with me to Michal Peretz. And if you want to come even, once a month, once every other month, come with me one time. For me, that's the ultimate going out. So this past Monday, we had a very full day. My brother, all in the same area. My brother had a bris. I had a shiva call to make that I'm going to talk about in a minute. And right after that was a Michal Peretz class. So Ralph came with me to the bris, came to the shiva because it was a friend of his as well. And afterwards, it's a Monday. He goes to me, I'm going to go back home because it's my night. I want to learn with Gabe tonight. So I didn't say, maybe cancel it. We're here anyway. Come with me, whatever. And I said, do whatever you want. He told me he's going to make his way to the train station. And he was on the train back to Tel Aviv, got off in the wrong stop, like away from our house. And let me just, hold on 1 minute. And he calls me up and he tells me, Gabe is not feeling good. I really didn't get in touch with him before. He's not feeling good. I was thinking, how could I get to you so we could go to Michal Peretz's class? Meanwhile, he was already an hour and a half away. There was no way he was making it. And he said, I'm just going to make my way home. Now, I had a decision to make. I could have gone in my head into a place that would like, why couldn't you call up Gabe beforehand? I'm always last. You make priorities with your friends. You spend time with them more than you want to spend time with me. How often do I ask you for anything? This makes me so happy. and you just don't, and then thoughts could go, you don't care about me, it doesn't matter what I ask you, I'm always doing things for you, you're never doing things for me. First of all, always, whenever we use the words never and always, it means that we're translating reality in a way that makes us feel lousy, and it makes us translate reality that makes the other person looks bad. And in making the other person looks bad, I myself don't feel good about myself. Like, I create a bad feeling inside of me. Hold on. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei minei mizana. So instead of the usual story, of the usual reality that I would translate the world in, I told myself, Ralph, poor Ralph, he went 2 stops. He now has to go crazy in order to get home. He's such a dedicated friend. He is always wanting to learn with anyone that wants to learn with him, and he makes time for them. And he also knows what's good for him, and he wants to create an atmosphere for himself that he'll be in an atmosphere that he loves and is happy with. And that happens not to be Michal Peretz. And I realized that by interpreting reality, the reality was that Ralph said, I don't want to go to Michal Peretz, I want to go learn with Gabe. Now, I could have turned it into, he doesn't care, he doesn't want, he doesn't this, he doesn't that, all he does is what he likes. Or I could turn it into, my husband knows his mind, knows what kind of classes he likes, knows the kind of way he wants to spend his nighttime, and just be happy that I have a husband that knows how to make himself happy. So that was an avodah that I had, that I was able to take what we learned last week and really implement it in deciding to create my own reality, which is a positive one, which is an invigorating one, which is one that I can sit with and be so happy with. And whenever I come back from the class, he always asks me, what did you learn? And somehow I could always share what I learned, and he really wants to hear what I learned. I always feel like if he would just come to the class, he'd get such a clearer picture. But no, he'd rather hear me repeat the class as opposed to going there and sitting there for 3 hours and watching a lot of women talk about the avodah that they did. Okay. Michal Peretz, what an avodah that she did that I loved, because it, for me, I think that it reflects an avodah that all of us are involved in. And I never thought about it. But if anyone wants to challenge me afterwards, like, just because I had to think about it a long time. Michal Peretz's husband turned 60. Sorry, he turned 65. And she wanted to celebrate. So her house is really down south, very far. And she decided that she was going to celebrate on Saturday night, because Shabbat ends up late, in her daughter's home, which is more closer to the center of the country. So her other children wouldn't have to drive 2 hours, they could drive 1 hour. And she got a guy to play a guitar so that they could sit around and sing. Usually the way she celebrates is you go out, you make a small bonfire, you sit around and you sing songs, and you talk. And her husband would talk about the year that he had, etc. So she wrote in the family WhatsApp, I'm making a birthday celebration for my husband, for Abba. Everyone's welcome to come. And she has a son who lives quite close. And he said, he didn't respond that he's coming. So she called him up before Shabbat, and she said to him, it will make me very happy if you came to the celebration. And he told her, Ima, I'm going in for a month of reserve duty. Like in the army, every year you have a certain amount of days that you do reserve duty in order for people to stay in shape and to remember, all their different tafkidim, all their different duties in the army. And he said, I'm leaving tomorrow, and I'm going to stay. I want to stay home with my family this Saturday night, and that's it. And she said, immediately, she said, I realized that I was just pashut lying. when I told my son, it'll make me so happy, it'll make me very happy if you came to the celebration, it sounds like if you don't come to the celebration, then I won't be happy. She said, my happiness doesn't depend if my son comes to the celebration or doesn't come to the celebration. I'll be happy regardless if he comes or not, because my happiness doesn't depend on anyone coming. My happiness actually doesn't depend on anyone. My happiness depends on myself. And she said, just as much as I wanted to see him, I wanted him to have a nice last Saturday night with his family, with his wife. So like, we're trying to be very be'emet and saying that something like, if someone does something for us that will make us happy, sometimes it could be like a manipulative ploy. Sometimes, it would really be happy if we saw that sun. And she said, if that's the case, if it would make me happy to see the sun, then a half hour before her husband's birthday, she would swung by, seen the sun, and then gone on to the birthday. Like, no one else is responsible for your happiness. We are responsible for our own happiness. And sometimes we try to make the people around us do things, out of guilt, out of, it's not nice, out of like, even by saying a sentence, like Michal said, it would make me very happy if you came to the celebration. And she was saying her avodah is now not trying to say any kind of sentence that would sound manipulative. And I don't want to make a sentence that even will not be true for myself. And because my happiness, she was saying, her happiness depends on herself making herself happy. It wouldn't have mattered if her son came or if her son didn't come. She would have just been happy. So that was Michal's avodah. Now, I want to go on to another avodah that I did with a friend. And the reason I'm bringing up so many avodot is I think that we spoke a lot about these situations, and they how do you say, like, they touch a lot of the lessons that were brought up. So I'm going to be saying another two avodot, that one of my friends and one of myself. So I have a friend, her name is Dina, and she has 8 daughters, Robert and Dina, and she was marrying her last and 8th daughter. Now, as opposed to doing, because she's from England, they do weddings differently in England. And usually in Israel, we split the wedding half and half. But in England, the way Dina and Robert usually did it is that they took charge of the wedding because they had daughters and they wanted to do the weddings. And the consuegros usually do the Shabbat Berachot, which is the Sebet, I guess, as they would call it. So half a year ago, they spoke to the consuegros and they asked, do you mind if we'll do the wedding and you'll do the Shabbat Berachot? And the reason Dina liked to do the wedding is because her brother, let's say, was killed in a terror attack 20 years ago, and she likes to have her father run the wedding and the chuppah, and that gives her father a lot of joy, and she likes to decide who's going to do the berachot, and she also, it's important for her to, let's say, have a mechitza at the wedding, so even if the chatan and kala don't want to, she's paying for it, and it's a matter of her wanting to do it the way she wants to do it, which is why she requested that. And they the consuegros said, fine, great. And as they were talking, the consuegros was saying, we're going to make a nice, big, beautiful Shabbat Berachot. The wedding was already 2 weeks ago, but a month before the wedding, the consuegros, as they were talking to her, Dina realized that they backed out of the desire to do a very big Shabbat Berachot, and they said, because you're making a very big wedding, so we're gonna make a really very small Shabbat Berachot, which we only want to invite, because this was her last daughter. All her daughters are married with children. They said we want it to be very, very intimate and only adults, and let all the parents, unless the child is nursing, leave the children elsewhere. It's going to be something very, very small. Now, Dina spoke to me. She called up And she told me, listen, it's unheard of. First of all, my whole family looks forward to the Shabbat Sheva Berachot. It's an opportunity for everyone all over Israel to come. And the name that she gave it is, I feel like I was taken advantage of. I took on the whole entire wedding. They were supposed to do a very big Shabbat Sheva Berachot, and they took advantage of me. I am being taken advantage of. Now, when we started to work on it, so I wanted to know, since when had she felt that she was taken advantage of, right? Because those were the most dominant words that were repeated. So she said, first of all, before I even tell you, like my whole life, I feel like I've been taken advantage of, like, and since I was really very young, I want to tell you that my consuegros did exactly what they wanted. They did their ratzon. They acted in a way that suited them. And it turned out that Dina did things throughout the months coming to the wedding based on what she thought her consuegros expect and like. She wasn't doing what she wanted. She wasn't doing what she could afford, but she was doing what her consuegros like sort of expected or hinted that they expected, or she interpreted it as what they expected. And she felt like they did exactly what they wanted, and she never did what she wanted. So one of the things that she wanted to work on was the issue of leaving her own emet and doing things based on someone else rather than your own ratzon, because her consuegros that she married into were very, very wealthy, and she gave above and beyond to the groom, above and beyond what she could afford, because she kept on saying, oh, it's not nice, how's it going to look, they're going to give my daughter so much, I'm not going to give them so much. So Dina went out of her what she could afford zone, just based on them. And the realization that no one takes advantage of us. We take advantage of ourselves by not being true to ourselves. No one can take advantage of us. The only one that takes advantage of us is us. And then we went into, where do the words taken advantage of originate? So it turns out that it originated when she was very small. Her family also had a lot of children. And her mother always, even though she wasn't the youngest one, her mother, like when it was time to go to school, she was the one that got the last sandwich. When it was time to give everyone breakfast, she got the last bowl of oatmeal. On Shabbat, when her mother gave the soup, she was the last one that got the soup, even though she wasn't the youngest one. And she always said about her mother to herself, my mother is taking advantage of me. I was being taken advantage of. And as an aside, mothers don't have an agenda to take advantage of their children. Our parents always, their agenda was to help us grow to be strong, resilient, competent, confident, young women. That is the way mothers are. They do what they do to the best of their abilities. And when we interpret what our parents did in a negative way, it hinders us. It hinders us as children, and it hinders us as adults. So now at this point in time, I went back with Dina to the incident, and I asked her, if you could see your mother now, right? And you see your mother giving you last one as a child, food always, which I doubted that it was always, but that's the way Dina interpreted it when she was little and as she was older. And this taking advantage of me is something that's been following her throughout her life. I said, if you saw your mother giving you now last, what would you think she's trying to teach you? What is she trying to teach you? And Dina said, she's trying to teach me that I could have delayed gratification, and I have the power in me to wait. I have the ability in me to wait. And how powerful is that message? The idea that a mother giving to her child last, it's something that she's trying to help grow in her child, for the child to realize that you have it in you, the ability to wait. That's your mother's Torah. And instead of saying to your mother, or in your head, I was being taken advantage of, I can say, my mother thought I was capable of learning delayed gratification. My mother thought that I needed that particular teaching, that particular Torah in my life. And I would say something else. Hashem put us in these particular parents' homes so we can learn that Torah. So at this point, Dina decided that she'll do her avodah and work on figuring out what works for her rather than what pleases, her consuegros, her husband, her bride of the daughter. Realizing that it's not her consuegros to blame. She should not be mad at her. And with the desire, 2 weeks ago this happened, to release all anger, she wrote a letter to her consuegro. And before Shabbat, she wrote a letter and she sent a plant saying how lucky they are to have their children marry, to have the families come together, and that she knows that the couple is going to flourish under the Torah that the consuegros have to teach them. And she sent that. And she didn't say another word about it. She didn't say a word, not to her daughter and not to her, her future son-in-law, anything like that. On Sunday, she gets a call from her consuegros, and they said, we really thought about it, and we realized that having a Shabbat Sheva Barachot in Israel is an opportunity for families to get together. So let's open up the ranks and let's include not only the children, like not only your grandchildren, but maybe also your sisters and brothers, the aunts and uncles, and let's try to take this Shabbat Sheva Barachot and expand it. So mamash, when we do our avodah, we see miracles. We see miracles happen in this world. And what Shoshana described before as her stepping back and allowing her husband to make his own health decisions. And her husband said, okay, I'll take responsibility for it. I feel doing the avodah gives room for everyone around. Like it changes things in this universe. It changes things. Like Hashem changes things for us in this universe. Now, speaking about avodah that we do when we have semachot, when we have like whether it's weddings or bris or bar mitzvahs or bat mitzvahs, whichever one we have, being a person who is about to birth a simcha in our lives, that's a definition, that's a draw that we have. And it's a definition that we need to decide what we want to put in the draw of the Baal Simcha. What is it that we want to put in the draw of me making an event, an affair? So this is 3 things that I want to give you guys as tips of what we put in the draw of making a simcha. And we need to very carefully measure anything that we want to put in this drawer. But I think these 3 things are something we should be putting in, and to be very careful not to put any extraneous things in the drawer, because then our description of Baal Simcha, of a person who is making an event, a happy event, it could make us fall flat on our face and not enjoy it. So what I'm saying 3 things. One is not to see, to decide to watch our eyes. Who showed up and who didn't show up, what anyone was wearing, how long they came for, what food they had or didn't have, how fast they came, how fast they left, at what point. It's like we decide we're not seeing any of that. Our simcha is going to be one that we are going to protect our eyes and our sight. And the only thing that we're going to see are the people who are happy around us. That's it. And another thing that we need to put in that drawer is to decide to accept what there is as opposed to what I plan to be. In other words, like we planned the photographer to take these many pictures, and he took and I planned for this to happen and that to happen, and my consuegros were going to come and see them come down or not come down or whatever. Like this is what we planned. We decide to relinquish our plans on the day of the wedding, bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah, bris, whatever. We relinquish our plan and we decide to be happy with what there is, with what Hashem brings in front of us. And the third thing is, when we have a simcha, we're here to get people's blessing and to bless people in return. Everyone is giving us, mabruk, and may you see happiness, and like so many blessings we're getting. Our description as a Baal Simcha is to be able to take all these blessings and the other to give blessing, because Hashem tells Abraham, you need to be a blessing to the people in your life. Now, how could Abraham be a blessing to everyone in his life? It's because Hashem blessed him, and there's so much blessing passing through him. It is an abundance and it overflows. Now, if Abraham doesn't want to be a blessing, he could just, stop the dam, and the blessings are going to stop, or they're just going to stop with him, and they're not going to go further on. But we have it in our abilities to be a beracha, to pass the blessings on to everyone around us, and everyone around us needs a blessing. So one of the things in my drawer that I'd love to have is the ability to see the person in front of me and be able to bless them, whether they need children or grandchildren, they need their children married, they need money, they need shalom bayit, that anything that they need, like we all need blessings. And you, as someone who's being so blessed, it's an opportunity to pass it on. So other than those description of those three things, as someone who is going towards a farach, towards a happy event, towards a simcha, these are the things we keep in the drawer and nothing else. So that if we see all of a sudden that, something happened with the catering, something happened with whatever it is, and we want to get angry with it, anger is not something we have in the drawer. So we do not, that's why we don't look. We don't want to have anger in the drawer. We don't want to have frustration. We don't want to have criticism. We don't want to have, stress in the drawer. We refuse to have it in the drawer when we have a simcha, which is why the three things that I described are essentials to be put in. And if you want to put anything else in, it has to be done very carefully and, gauging it from side to side. Okay. This is also because my friend Dina, when she was going towards the wedding, it was necessary for her really to describe herself, the mother of the bride. What is she going to have? What is she going to have in her drawer as a mother of the bride, as a mother of the bar mitzvah boy, as the grandmother of the bris, all those things. I have one more avodah that I did. Wait, hold on one second, please. Hi. Sorry. So this past Shabbat, my friend Sandra came to Tel Aviv. Her daughter lives here. Her daughter is like an hour and a half walk away from me. And her daughter lives right where Tal lives, not far away from Tal. And her granddaughter was having her bat mitzvah in the shul. And the granddaughter actually learned her parasha and had a women's minyan where she read the Torah. They're Orthodox, and she has 5 daughters, and each of the daughters actually had a woman's minyan and the reading of the Torah. It wasn't actually a woman's minyan. It was, we prayed with the whole shul, and then when it was time to read, the reader of the shul read the Torah for the community, and the women that were her friends and everything like that went upstairs to a separate room. They brought up a separate Torah, and she read the Torah for the women. So Sandra told me, Michal, if you want to walk and, spend the day, and we're having a kiddush, and I'd love to have you here. And I said, great, I'm doing that. Ralph stayed in his shul. He came home, ate alone, and I woke up really early, and I made the hour and a half walk. And then she told me, I'm inviting Tal because she lives right nearby, and she knows Tal and likes Tal. And so Tal also came to the reading of the Torah, and Tal walked into the shul, and when she walked into the shul, I almost fainted because she was wearing jeans and a regular shirt, and as if it wasn't Shabbat, as if it wasn't a shul, as if like, what do you mean? This is how you come dressed to a shul? But the truth was that it was on a much lower volume than it used to be. And I said, what name do I give what Tal is doing. So Tal's doing what's right for her. She's doing her emet. She's not trying to hide anything. She's not trying to make it look as if she's not. And really my job is to realize where I'm not in my emet and to do my avodah on that. And I said to myself, there are many places in my life where I don't live the emet. And instead of looking at my daughter and criticizing her ability to live in her emet, I need to look within myself. And just this past week, I mean, of many examples that I could give of myself, but this past week, I planned a class in Beit Shemesh on Tuesday. And a couple of Israeli women, they wanted to learn Michal and asked me to give like the first basic class over there. And I really was very happy and excited to give it. As I told you before, my brother had a bris on Monday, and Sunday he calls me up and he said, listen, Michal, I really need your help. My daughter who had the baby is a basket case. And my wife, who's my sister-in-law, she's in her 8th month herself. She's having contractions and she has bronchitis. She can't help my daughter. And do me a favor, could you just come and be with us and take care of my daughter a little bit? Like, she hasn't been sleeping and she is losing it. Oh, sorry guys, I just got a phone call and I hung up. Let me just see if I can just tell the girl that I am, hold on 1 minute. No, sorry. I just want to tell her that not to bother me. Okay, sorry. Okay, very good. Sorry. So he asked me if I could come after the bris and just stay overnight and be with his daughter. So all of a sudden I have to decide to go to the class that I planned for Tuesday or to be there for my brother. And I took the two things and I said, on the one hand, I would like to go give the class. On the other hand, I'd like to go and help my brother and be there for my niece. And what is my emet? My emet is to go be with my niece. And at that point, I should have called up the class and said, we're going to push the class another week, another 2 weeks. But I didn't do that because I was thinking, how's it going to look? And I committed and everyone's looking forward and it's not nice. And I was debating, how could I do the two things at the same time? Maybe I'll go and be with my niece and then leave at 10 and then come back at 12 and blah, blah, blah. Like, I drove myself crazy as opposed to really going with my emet. And anyway, thank God, like the night before, the hostess called me up. It turns out she and her family got COVID and the class was canceled. It was like God made the decision for me, but that is not a good level to be in. A level to be in is to be able to, like, what Hashem wants from us is to bring our light into this world in the way that our neshama is shown. Our neshama is shown. And our neshama is shown by us living our emet. Only when we live our emet could our light shine in this world. So my inability to decide, to want to disappoint, to be nice, to whatever, all that is me not being in my emet. And perhaps when I will be able to do it, nothing that I will see will bother me. So the message is, we need to look into our neshama, because our ratzon is being able to see our neshama and not the outer peel. Now, I told you that we went to a shiva. The shiva was a very close friend of mine, Esther and Shimon. Shimon is the oldest of 4 brothers, and he's 65 years old, and his brother is 45 years old. And his brother dropped dead on the soccer field playing soccer with his son, with his 15-year-old son, died on Shabbat. And Shimon found out after Shabbat. And of course we went to the funeral, and the funeral showed me exactly the avodah that I'm doing, because first of all, it was a huge shock. And Shimon's mother and father passed away a couple of years ago. And he was telling me, I was the one that they were supposed to sit Shiva for next. Like, I'm the oldest brother, not my younger brother who still has a 5-year-old in the house. And as we walked the body, and the body is wrapped in a talit, and then they put the body in the hole that was dug for him. And I know Shimon's brother, his name is Gil. I know him well. And this big he had a big personality. He had a big neshama. And I only realized how big the neshama was when they put this small body into the hole. And that's when I realized our body is a million times bigger than this. Our neshama is a million times bigger than the small body that ends up in the ground. But our neshama is like all of Hashem's existence in the world. And when we take care of our neshama, when we are listening to our neshama, when we're able to see the people's neshama around us, then we don't look on the outer peel of them. We look at the deepest level of them and at the greatness of who they are. And it doesn't matter who they are. Every neshama is just great. And with Shimon's brother, I realized his body wasn't him. That wasn't him. What we buried in the ground was not who he was. Who he was really was a whole huge big neshama of a man who loved to give, and a man who loved to do chasadim, and a man who loved to play with his children, and a man who loved to take care of his wife and to work hard and to be honest in everything that he did. He was a car trader and he was an honest one. And he was much bigger than this small body that went into the ground. And that's what we need to walk around in this world. We need to walk around looking at the neshamot around us, as opposed to looking at it like I was looking at my daughter. Oh, she's wearing jeans and that. Like, that's just looking at her body. It's not looking at all at her neshama. And when I went to this funeral, I came back and I told Ralph, my avodah really in this world is to not see like the orange. I don't want to see the peel, the walnut. I don't want to see the peel. The peel is irrelevant, really. I want to see the neshama. The body is given to us, so the neshama is going to have somewhere to rest, somewhere to house itself. But that is the important thing, not anything else, around. Okay, I'm stopping for a minute, and I want, if anyone has questions before I continue about what I just said. Okay. Anyone? Questions? Okay, continue. One of the themes we started to learn with Michal is, how do we live in a world that's not a jungle? How do we create the Gan Eden that we were meant to be in from the first days of creation, as we said? So last week we said one of the first things that puts us in the jungle, right? And when I say jungle, I mean out of Gan Eden, right? One of the things that puts us out of Gan Eden is blame. Just like Adam and Chava, Hashem put them in Gan Eden. He gave them everything. And instead of telling Hashem, Chatati, I sinned, teach me how to delay gratification so that when I see something in front of me, I can hold back. I don't know how to do that yet. You're my father. Teach me how to do it. Instead, he started to blame his wife and the snake, and he blamed God. You gave me this woman, and she made me eat. So when we blame other people around us for our unhappiness, for our stress, for anything that we're responsible for, just like Michal, when I said before, she told her son, it would make me so happy if you came. It's like almost like she was telling him, I'm making you responsible for my happiness. And if you don't come, then I guess I'm just not going to be happy. And that's like putting the blame on someone. So putting us out of Gan Eden is blame. And, he didn't give me, he came late, he didn't smile, she didn't say hi. These are all the people around me who I blame for not living in Gan Eden. If only he would smile and say hi, and only if she would, she didn't ignore me in the grocery, and no one really ignored you. Just her shoe was too tight and she grimaced. But we create a reality of people ignoring us and people not nice and people not saying hi, and all these are stories that we create in our heads. She's a snob, she's not considerate, blah blah blah, and all those types of stories, they take us out of Gan Eden. We only harm ourselves. And we put ourselves in a jungle. We put ourselves in a jungle of not liking people, of thinking negative things about people, of being annoyed at people, looking at people in a different way. I had a friend that a close friend of mine wasn't invited to the wedding of her, she thought it was a close friend, a friend's child, right? And the conversation that I had with her is like, she was telling me about her friend. She's a snob. She's not considerate. She invites the rich people. Like, I'm telling you, all that talk just made my friend feel bad about herself. That's all it did. And it created a reality for herself, like everyone is out to get her. But instead, it would have been so much easier to put herself back in Gan Eden and say, it was an oversight, or I guess I feel closer to her than she does to me. Like, not from blame, but just, this is what it is. And I'm gonna be able to live with that. Like, I sent a gift, it doesn't get acknowledged, she's unappreciative, like blaming. She doesn't do the right thing, she has bad upbringing, that's what she always does. Blaming, calling things negative names takes me out of Gan Eden. Okay, what else takes me out of Gan Eden? What else puts me straight into the jungle? In the jungle, we have something that's called survival of the fittest. Like, that the strong one is better off. Like, we have in our heads, the rich one, they get it all. A feeling like there's only a certain amount of resources and someone is taking something from me. Someone is making a bigger wedding for me, has a nicer car than me, has a bigger house than me. Like, when someone has these things, I feel like as if it came at my expense, as if something was taken away from me, as if there's only a certain amount of abundance in this world. And because someone else got the abundance, I don't have the abundance, right? And those are the reasons that there are conflicts and war and arguments and a lot of, how do we say, like a lot of constrictions. Like, a lot of us feeling constriction is when we know that when we feel constricted, when we're arguing, when we feel we're at a war, where there's a conflict, we know that we're in a jungle place. We have stepped out of Gan Eden. So that's the second thing. The third thing that takes us out of Gan Eden and puts it in the jungle is being in calculation mode, calculating all the time. What does calculation mean? It means that I believe one thing is at the expense of the other, or that something is at my own expense. Like, this could have very well been, right? My husband and I coming to Tel Aviv, right? Me going to Tel Aviv is at the expense of my dream. What's my dream? To live on a farm. Nothing is at the expense of my dream. Nothing. My dream can one day come. I could create other dreams. I could 2-3 days a week actually go live in a farm if I want to. Nothing is at my expense. I heard like people saying, people whose whose spouse decided that they want to go to Deal because of Corona. They want to raise their children there. They want the Deal life, whatever. So they say, going to Deal is at the expense of my children's education. No, Hashem doesn't work that way. Nothing is at the expense of anything. The children could still have good education, and they might have a better social life, and they might meet their chatan or kala over there. We don't know what Hashem's plan for us are in Deal. So nothing is at the expense of anything, because once we decide to do it, it's really Hashem deciding to do it. And it's not going to come at anyone's expense. The children are going to be as educated as Hashem wants them to be. Or someone told me, my child can't come to Deal for the summer. And my daughter really wants to, and my son-in-law doesn't want to because he feels it's too expensive. And in her head, she says, not going to Deal, my grandchildren not going to Deal is at the expense of my grandchildren's social life. This is totally creating a reality that doesn't exist. It does not exist. Not going to Deal in the summer is not going to be at the expense of anyone's social life. There are other people in Brooklyn. Your child's social life is not dependent on where they're going to be. Your child's social life is dependent on the kind of strengths that you're going to give them, how confident they feel, how good they feel about themselves, how strongly they're able to identify their ratzon, to know their neshama, and be able to do their retzonot. That's what it depends on. It doesn't depend on what children they're going to play with. Because when we are being in calculations, in Hebrew we call it in chishuvim, that we think that one thing is going to come at the expense of another, it's called living a life on the surface level, on a superficial level, right? It's like one person picked the fruit off the tree, I'm not going to have a fruit from that tree. If I take something for myself, then they're not going to have. If I give her, then I'm not going to have. It's like called life is sum zero. Now, living in these calculations comes from not believing that Hashem has a million ways to do what needs to be done in this world. If he wants my children to have a social life, they will have a social life. If he wants them to be social, they will be social, even if they don't go to deal, even if they never go to deal in their life. My children are, as long as I give my children values and I teach them how to see their own neshama, how to see their retzonot, how not to, like, there was a woman who said that her son in Israel, he's in 8th, 9th grade, and the class is going on a class trip. And on the class trip, the children are given their phone 1 hour at night in their tents that they could have their phone. And he is on a stint of not being on his phone because he felt himself getting very addicted. But he doesn't want children to laugh at him or to ask him, where's your phone and what are you doing? So he decided that he doesn't want to go on the trip. Now, really, it's the mother's place over here to try to help her child see his ratzon, which is not to have a cell phone, and to feel good about himself and strong about himself, and to feel proud of whatever of activity he'll choose to do, whether it's read a book or write a letter or whichever thing he decided to do. But because the mother is always scared that the child is going to be, is going to be like the odd one out and not social and whatever, she puts her calculations, her fears in her child's head. And then he says, I just don't want to go on the trip. I don't want to deal with these fears. However, these calculations come from an inability to trust Hashem that everything could work out, and we're not living in a sum zero kind of a world. Okay, any questions from here? And before I continue on to the to another example of what it means living in calculations. Anyone has a question? Okay. Michal Peretz told the story of her daughter, that her daughter Raz made to meet her brother in Yafo by the ocean at 8:00 at night. And it turned out that Raz didn't realize that her car wasn't near her, and it took her a while till she asked a friend to take her to her car, which she didn't feel comfortable about doing. And as she started driving towards Yafo, she realized that she was going to be late, and she's very careful to be punctual. And she started to get very stressed about it. And now, when we start to get stressed about things, it means that we reverted to living in the jungle again. We're out of Gan Eden, right? And Michal asked her, so she said, Raz said, I meant to meet with my brother, and because of me, he will waste his time. So Michal said, time could never be wasted. If you say you wasted your time, you don't understand what time is. What is time? Time in Hebrew is called zman, right? Zman comes from the word hineni muchana umzumana. Zman comes from the word I am ready and I am invited here. I am ready and invited. I am ready to be invited. Okay, Zman means to be invited. Now, what does it mean that I'm ready here to be invited? It means that at any given time, God will put in this time, his shelichut for me, his message for me, his shelichut is his, guys, help me out. How do you say shelichut in English? Right, Hashem has his shelichut for me. Guys, anyone with the Hebrew word of shelichut, English word for
mission? Is it mission?
A mission. Thank you. Yeah. At any time, Hashem has his shelichut for me, and time is for me to figure out what God's shelichut is for me, right? Now, and I will always be ready. I will be ready for God's invitation, right? I will be mezumana, muchana and mezumana. I'll be ready for God's invitation and what he sends me to do in that time. Time is a resource that God gives us. Hashem gives us a lot of resources. And he gives us, let's say, one of the resources is life. One of the resources is time. Another is strength. Another is the place that I live. Another is money. And all these resources are tools, right, in my life to fulfill my retzonot in order for me to have my neshama's light to shine here in this world. Okay, that's why Hashem gives me the resources. I want to make myself salad, right? I want to eat a salad. That's what my neshama wants now. So God will send me money to buy the vegetables, time to go buy it, energy to cut it, and before we say Aratzon, first of all, we won't get anywhere, and then once we say Aratzon, we're going to take God's resources and make that happen for us. Now, what happens to us instead of taking all these tools and resources as helping hands that Hashem gave us, right? What happens is these resources started to control our lives. They manage us instead of we managing them. The cell phone also, it's a tool as well, but it's something I remember with my cell phone. I could plan like a whole bar mitzvah just with a cell phone because it has in it everything: the email, the phone, the WhatsApps, a fax, anything to sign, to scan. That is a tool, and yet sometimes we feel like we're enslaved to the tool. So we need to know that these, including time, including money, including space and energy and strength and everything, that these are tools that were given to us here to serve us and to bring God's ratzon in the world through me. That's what time is given to us. Now, why is the clock here? Why do we have a clock then? We have a clock to know what time to wake up for Vatikin, what time to pray, what time to light my candles, when Michal time ends, when Shabbat comes in, when Shabbat comes out. The clock shows me, it serves me, right? It sometimes it feels like we're watching the clock and it manages us. But what we want to do is we want to come to all our meetings. We want to come to everything that we want to be at, to any place that we want to be. We want to be filled with light, with chesed, with desire to give our tov around us. It doesn't matter when. When we get there, it will start. There's no such thing as anyone waiting. Like, I never make anyone wait. And it's not me who makes them wait. At this point, let's say her brother, who was going to wait 45 minutes for her, God decided that her brother needs time to do other things. She could be invited and ready. Her brother could be invited and ready to sit down and wait and say Tehillim and go help someone. And like there are many things that he could choose to do with his time. No one could waste our time. We can't waste our own time. We each one are invited, right? We're mizumana and we're ready to be able to do everything that Hashem has in source had in store for us. And I'm not here to serve it, and I'm not here to serve the resources that Hashem gave us. And when we live with time, and this is what I call living in and out of the jungle. Like when we live with that concept of time, that time here really is to serve me and I'm not here to serve it. We see miracles beyond, like we're able to do so much more with our time than what we would have ever planned, right? It's like we live in another time zone, another time frame. We're above it all. We're above time and calculation and money we're going to finish the story is I gave this one and the other one won't have. All that story will totally finish. It will disappear. I had like one of the students in Michal's class. Michal has a house down south, and with the house, she built a small Airbnb next to it so that she could host her children. And she realized that for 5 days a week, that Airbnb, that simmer that she made, is not being used because her kids just visit her during the weekends. So she made the simmer available for any one of her students that wants to come for a day or two with her husband or with other friends to come and just, have a mini vacation. And she also decided to turn part of the simmer into like a gmach of women's clothes. So a couple of girls came to her. They came, to spend the day in the simmer, to spend 2 days. And it turns out that the day before, someone dropped off 6 huge bags to be sorted out as women's clothes. So when the girls came at night, Michal asked them, do you want to help me out tomorrow? Like, we could do a couple of things together. Do you want to help me sort? And they said, great, we'd love to spend the morning with you. We said, okay, I start my morning at Batikin. The girls said, yeah, we want to wake up with you. She said, great, meet me in shul at 5:45. They go to shul, they go to Batikin. And then Michal gives a yoga class to the young girls in the midrasha. They went with her to the yoga class, and then she gave a regular class. And then she asked them, do you want to come and sort out the bags? They went to sort out the bags. Then she said, there's a family that just had their 10th child and they need help, in organizing drawers in their house. Do you want to come help me? They said, yeah, we'll come help you. She said, I looked at my watch. I thought it would be 6:00 in the afternoon. It was 12:00 noon. She said, we did so much. It was like as if they were above time. Time was not an issue for them anymore. It was like just seeing what Hashem brings our way and answering God's call for us. When I was in class the other day, a husband who was very pained. This is actually the class I want Ralph to come to that many husbands go to. He was very pained and he said, I give my wife, I want to just tell you how I live in the jungle. I give my wife 1,000 shekels a month. That's $250 a month to do with it whatever she wants. And you know what she does? She uses it to fill the pantry. And I ask her why. I give you 1,000 shekels. Why do you only buy food with it? Why don't you just do other things with it? And Michal told him, you give your wife 1,000 shekels and the conversation ends here and forever about what she does with 1,000 shekels. What she does with it is what she wants to do with it. And he goes, but I feel guilty. I feel guilty because I wish I had more to give her. I don't think this is enough. And Michal told him, when you have more, you'll give her more. And what if my wife tells me I need more? And you tell your wife, when I have more, I will gladly give you more, but I can't take bills out of my pocketbook that don't exist. And if she wants more, what should I say? Tell her, when I have more, I'll give you more. And that's how it ends. That is how, and then money is not being fought about. It's not being discussed. It's not being like a central focus in a life when we see money as something that's here to serve us, to bring our light and ratzon into this world. Okay, I'm stopping the class over here. I have a couple of more points of how we know we're in a jungle and how we know we're in Gan Eden. And we're going to continue along this theme. But I think, these, I gave enough tools to work with. And I just wanted to know if anyone has questions. I'll put the recording on hold.